Composition to Students. This video is an explanation of Amy Guptill's three-story thesis and paper. One of the things that Guptill starts by talking about is how college students often struggle to some extent to get away from just a basic 5-paragraph essay that they were taught in high school. So what she starts by talking about is, if we had a topic like global warming, for example, a lot of students, if given, or if someone picked that as a topic, they might do something, like global warming is negative, or a kind of oversimplified thesis like that doesn't really allow itself, it doesn't lend itself to making a more complex point. So, the person's first body paragraph might be something like, global warming hurts agriculture, and global warming is making it harder to live in parts of the world, or something like that. Maybe we'd have some examples in there. And then, let's see, I'm not thinking of a second one or a third one. Let's see, global warming is leading to loss of, shoreline. Okay. So, so it would just, and like Guptill talks about, there's not an organic structure here. I could move around these points, right? Like I could put this one here and move this one up here. There's nothing very organic about the structure of the paper. Each of the paragraphs, it kind of stands alone and separately. So that is what we're trying to get rid of by learning a 3-story paper. Oh, sorry. Actually, I should probably leave that there for the moment. So when we're looking at the 3 stories, the first story is factual. This is stuff like background information, history, or defining terms, depending on what your topic is. For the most part, in paper 2, background and history are probably going to be the ones that apply best to your paper, but it kind of depends on what your topic is. So if you have questions about that, feel free to message me. So then the second story, that is argumentative, right? That is where we get into the real claim. You're either arguing about if there is a problem, or the effects of the problem, or how to solve the problem. And it kind of depends on what you're talking about. We'll get to this some more in a minute when we're talking about the different potential gender topics. Because yours might look a little bit different than this, but I think that's one way to see it. So then the third story, that is the implications, right? This is looking at why must we act to fix this? Or like, why is it significant, essentially? All right. Sorry. Okay. Gosh darn it. So with global warming, I'm giving up. I'll just do autocorrect. So with global warming, for example, the first story, the factual, this is the part, that people agree on. So what people agree on with global warming, people might not agree on the causes of global warming. 5-6 years ago, people didn't necessarily all agree that global warming was happening. But even now, some people that are more conservative on this issue do say that global warming is happening. We're just arguing about the causes. So I think you could say for this first story that we might do kind of global warming definition and explanation. So explain to people like what global warming is, so they have a background on it. And then we would do something like, just the fact that, oh my gosh, that global warming is happening. And we would probably look for some stats or examples or something on that. So these two things would be part of our first story of that paper. And then the second story, the argument, what most people argue about now is what causes global warming. Now, it's up to you how you do this paper. You could do both sides of the argument. If we did that here, we could say, let's see, some argue this is caused by human activity. Others argue this is a natural process. And so then that is where I would find a source, right, for each of those. And then the third story, why must we act to fix this? Why is it significant? Let's see. So people must come to an agreement because regardless, oops, of the cause, global warming is affecting people in all parts of the world. And then I might give some examples. With this would probably end up being a body paragraph. Sometimes your third story, though, is your conclusion. So that is kind of up to you if your third story ends up being a part of the body, or if it ends up being your conclusion. So I think you guys can tell how the three stories here are so much different from the 5-paragraph essay that we see here, and how the three stories end up being a lot more meaningful, right, and organic. And this is going to help you get to a better, higher level claim. So for those of you who sort of struggle with getting your writing up to the college level, that is what this 3 stories will do for you. Now, next week in class, we will talk about how to boil all of this down into a thesis. For now, just worry about what are my 3 stories, and I think you could almost see this as an outline for the paper. I want to come down a little bit and talk about just some potential topics we could use. So this one for today, gender in schools, that's one that we read our articles over. You don't have to use those articles in your paper. It's up to you in the next week to kind of come up with whatever topic you want to write your paper over, and then do some research. So you don't have to use any of my sources. You'll notice on the assignment page it tells you you need to use at least one source of at least 10 pages. I have given you 2 sources that are that length, so the Hoff-Sommers article as well as the Garbake chapter that we looked at in class last week. So both of those texts could easily be used as your 10-page source. But you don't have to use my topics or my sources. You can go find your own. But first, let me just show you how we would set it up if we were doing this gender in schools. So the factual background, we would probably start with a little bit of history. So just talking about how in the early 1900s, let's see, education valued males over females. And I could probably like use something from the Garbake chapter to talk about that. And then I could transition and talk about how, let's see, why don't I say, feminist efforts led to reforms, things like Title IX, that, let's see, gave girls more of an advantage in schools. And so there, I'm probably going to use Garbake again because he talks about, like the impact that the feminist movement had on schools and things like that. So I think he would work well. I could do a paragraph over each of these. It just kind of depends on the way it shakes out. Or I could use this as my introductory paragraph, and then I could use this as my first body paragraph. That might make sense too. So then the argumentative level, that would be, have these efforts hurt men? Okay, so we might say, however, these efforts might have injured males in schools, as Hoff-Sommers shows. And I could just put Hoff-Sommers in the parenthetical, but I'm just working her in here. So as Hoff-Sommers shows, the reforms caused by feminism, or maybe we want to say like spurred by feminism. Or actually, let's see. Males have fallen behind in education. And she contends this is due to feminist reforms valuing girls over boys in schools. That might end up being 2 paragraphs. That is kind of a complicated issue she brings up. And then I would say opponents argue that boys falling behind is not due to feminist reforms, but because, let's see, but because masculinity, traditional masculinity is not conducive to education. And then that is Kimmel's point. Okay. And so then, all right, implications. So that would be something like, regardless of the reason, males have fallen behind in American education and the work force, and steps must be taken to get men back on even footing, or something like that. So these again are my three stories. So here's my factual, my background, my argumentative, and my implications. So if I were using the articles I gave you all for today, this would be one way to do it. All right, I'm going to go down to just a couple more of these and give you some quick ideas on how we might do this, just to make sure you guys are totally with me. So men in the workforce. So my factual level, and I'm just going to be brief with these, is that, let's see, men have fallen behind in the economy. Oh, you know what? Let's see. I might also kind of go back into history for this one. So let's see. Women started entering the workforce in the early 1900s. And let's see, in the new millennium, are taking over in professional jobs. There we go. Men have fallen behind in the economy, are graduating college at lower rates, and I think that's probably fine. Maybe we could say due to graduating college, and actually high school too. High school and college at lower rates. Okay. So argumentative, this is something people do not disagree on, okay? I mean, it is unfortunate, but men have fallen behind in the economy. Just statistically, it's going to be really hard to find someone that says that right now men are not having trouble economically. So then my argumentative level, right, that is where I could get into it. So I can go one of two ways with this, or I can represent the entire debate. It's up to me. When I was up here, I was representing the entire debate, but you guys don't have to go that way. You can make a specific claim and just argue for that specific claim. So I'll give you two different options here. So like option 1 and then option 2. So option 1 could be something like, let's see, men have fallen behind due to, I mean, and this is kind of the one where we blame like the economy for valuing women more. This is in a Rosen article that is in the course. So if you're interested in making this point, I would encourage you to go to the synthesis module, and the Rosen article is linked in there. But men have fallen behind due to a changing economy that no longer values their skills. Let's see, an economic shift. Oh, I guess that would kind of go in my implications, wouldn't it? An economic shift is needed. Well, and actually that's kind of argumentative too. I think it depends, because some people would say that, you know, we need to work on bringing back factory jobs and things like that. But this is the other side of it. Some people argue that factory jobs are just gone. They've become automated, and so men need to get with the times. So in that way, you know, these two could come together and be the same part of a single paper if you want to represent the entire debate. But if you just want to argue your point, you could just do this point for like 2 paragraphs, or this point for 2 paragraphs, which is men have fallen behind because they have not adapted to a changing economy. Society needs to be more accepting of men